Every day, season 2 is here now. Land is still being shunned by Moraine. She just ain't gonna let this one go away. Hey, hey. Well, do wounds healed by an ice that I still hurt the next day? That was something I've done quite a bit of pondering over. In today's video, we'll talk about this and the rift that's still there between Moraine and Lan, and did Moraine tell a lie? Okay, let's get into it. I'm Koala Sedai, and I'm just loving breaking down Season 2 of The Wheel of Time, scene by scene, and then sharing it with you. The scene that we're examining today is from Episode 2, and I've numbered it as Scene 2, which is really the opening scene because Scene 1 was the cold open. We just get 2 short minutes to see how things are going at Tiffin's Well the next morning, and I think there's a little bit of a chill in the air. Let's start with the elephant in the room: how well Moraine and Lan were healed, or rather, how they were not completely healed. They are both looking very tender indeed. Now, healing with a capital H is a talent with a capital T. Spirit is the predominant weave, but air and water are also used, and there are several types of healing. In one, everything is healed completely and utterly. Now, this means that if a cut is healed, there's not even a scar left behind. According to the companion, this is the only kind of healing that will work on a wound from a Myrddraal's Thakandar wrought blade, although it has been known to still leave a nasty scar in some cases. Now, this method of healing takes considerable energy from the person being healed, and the greater the wound, the greater the amount of energy it will take for that person. Now, the skill of the healer and the amount of talent with a capital T will also play a large part in how effective the healing is. I've heard some different levels of discussions on this scene and the fact that Moraine and Lan were still in bad shape, but I think it's perfectly reasonable for this to be so. Adelaus, so far as what we know from her in the books, was not a particularly strong channeler, and there's no mention in the companion of her having any talent for healing. Verin is noted to have some ability with healing, but not great. So this means that it's reasonable that she was able to save their lives and heal their wounds enough, but they were left in some discomfort. At least they were going to be able to travel and not be left having to eat huge amounts of food constantly. And this may have also been a factor that played into how far Verin took the healing, because they would have been so exhausted and depleted that travelling would have become very difficult because they would have been needing to eat huge meals. So the only thing I really have left on that is the odd way Adelaus asks Lan if he wants some more healing. Possibly if she has no talent at all, she truly doesn't realise that Verin has likely done all she can. And it's one of the few little lines that didn't quite sit well for me, but I think that she was actually also just being a little bit cute and flirty. I like the way that that whole scene then kind of fades to the background and Verin comes out and the focus shifts to the foreground as she comes to speak with Moraine and what their conversation holds. Because Verin is completely aware that Moraine has been exiled, but our super sleuth has still decided that she will head to the White Tower. Now, it's a really interesting little set of scenes flicking back and forth here. Verin knows a bit about what's going on without Moraine telling her, but she's also on a big fishing expedition, while Lan, on the other hand, is just totally clueless. In the books, we're used to Verin behaving more overtly in a dithery kind of way, while in the show, it's kind of like Adelaus is the distraction. instead of Varen using that distracting behaviour, and I'm finding that really interesting to watch. At this point, however, you wouldn't say Varen seems like she is the super sleuth we know her to be, but she quietly shows that she is indeed watching everything that's going on, is pretty clued in, and is putting a lot of energy into trying to put all of the pieces together. And I just love the facial acting during this scene. So we start with Adelaide entering, and she looks towards Moraine first, weighs things up, and obviously decides she doesn't need to go near her. Once she turns and sees Lan, she simply makes a beeline for him and takes the opportunity to actually move into his personal space, crouching in front of him and putting his hand on his leg. And maybe that was even the reason for her use of that odd line about wanting more healing. She might have been using that line as a way to distract as she moves into his personal space. Then as we pull back a little and Varen approaches, her attention is fully on Moraine, and her body language backs this right up. Varen speaks calmly, and when she says she knows Moraine has been exiled, the look on Moraine's face is gold. Now we get the rubbing salt into the wound moment when Moraine stumbles as she stands from her chair and Lan moves to assist her. Moraine holds a hand up in a halt gesture. At least she's accepted that they're travelling together, as she says, "We need to leave," but within a moment she grinds that salt in further by instructing Lan to have Tomas saddle her horse, as he's weak and she doesn't want her saddle to slip. It wasn't until a couple of watches that I realised that when Moraine says, "We have to leave," she's not really including Lan. Like, Varen just told her that they would be accompanying them, so that makes a we. And while Moraine knows he will come, notice she says, "We have to leave if I am to make it to the docks before sunset." Just so oof. We watched Moraine throwing stones trying to drive Lan away last episode, and it's abundantly clear here at the opening that this hasn't changed. When Varen speaks to Moraine, her words were that she assumes Moraine will go to the White Tower first. Moraine doesn't contradict, she just states that she's exiled. Varen doesn't say anything about where she assumes Moraine will go after that, so we are really not sure how much Varen knows. When Lan asks where she's going, she states the White Tower, and he tries to presumably say, "But you're exiled," and she simply cuts him off with the insult about him being unable to saddle a horse. This brings up an interesting thought for me, and I had to go over it for a while, and I did go back and forwards a little bit. Was Moraine intending to go to the White Tower, or did she tell a lie? Well, after quite a bit of deliberation, I have concluded that she was telling Lan an Aes Sedai truth. The detail is in the question Lan asked, which was, "Where are we headed?" Now, in general usage of the words, if I asked you where you're headed, I would expect you to know that I'm asking you where you are intending as your destination. However, if we look at a map of Randland, we can see that if you follow a fairly straight line from Arafel to Cairhien, you would go through Tar Valon. So this means that while Moraine was intending to go to Cairhien, she was heading towards the White Tower. Indeed, the truth you hear may not be the truth she was telling. The scene then ends with Lan showing signs of frustration with Moraine and the whole situation. We honestly can't just have Lan stand there stoically showing nothing. He gives enough facial and body language acting that we get what's going on for him. But I think it stays well in character for him to be showing very little. And remember, this was a private conversation, and his reaction was after Moraine left even, so it was for us alone. Well, this was a relatively short breakdown scene because there's a lot of setup happening, but not a lot more to unpack, unless I missed something big. We find that Verin is a sufficient enough healer to have saved their lives. The healing has left them with some pain and probably scars, but won't have drained them so much that they can't travel. Verin has a fair idea of some of what's going on, and Moraine tells both her and Lan as little as possible, as she still intends to get away alone and follow her pursuit of Rand with her knowledge of Lanfear being out. So, did you see anything else that I missed? Particularly if it relates to or flips something from the books. I'd love to know anything else you can see in this. Please do. Also, make sure you take a moment to like, subscribe, share, and comment away as much as you like, because I love hearing your thoughts. I'll be back with more as soon as I can. I'm Koala Sedai, and I am still loving Wheel of Time Season 2.